Greetings from Oklahoma, where the wind comes sweeping across the plain. It is sundown, and I was out on the road today on Route 60 through the northern quadrant of Oklahoma. It was easily 100 degrees out there, so I pulled in here at about 3:30 p.m. and took a nap, and the sun is going down and the cool air is starting to come in. There's a little bit of wind out here. I don't like wind in microphones, but in keeping with the sort of off the cuff and straight up iPhone shooting style that I've come to enjoy doing, there might be a little wind in the audio, so I apologize for that if you hear it. I mean, if I hear too much, I won't post it, but I told people I was going to do a longer video the last time I did a short. So the rule is it's not a rule, but people have told me you're not supposed to do a short and a long form video at the same time, because I guess they fight each other, or one will suffer and the other one won't. But I mean, it really doesn't matter, because I'm not putting posts up every day. So the idea is that these longer videos people can watch, and it helps the channel because they're longer form videos, and I'm also not reaching to just kind of finish it in 59 seconds. And so I'm going to respond to a couple things that people have said in the comments, and just kind of talk about what's been going on, 5 or 6 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, here by the side of the road in Tonkawa, Oklahoma, which is right down the road from Ponca City. And just for reference, this is the location and where it actually happened for the Martin Scorsese picture, which is about the Osage Nation's trials and tribulations when they discovered oil, and they became some of the wealthiest people in America, and the settlers didn't like it, and there were some issues. So this goes back to the early 1920s. Oddly enough, there was a 1960s movie, The FBI Story, with Jimmy Stewart. And they actually opened with the FBI investigation of the Osage situation. And I remember watching that as a kid, because most of it was about Alvin Karpis and John Dillinger and people like that. But they did open with the FBI situation with the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. It wasn't clear that it was the Osage, but I think it's pretty interesting that was actually covered. So I'm sure that the filmmakers of this new movie, Martin Scorsese, etc., know. But that's where we are. It's in the upper quadrant of Oklahoma, just before you get to the Panhandle. And of course, the other historical part of this part of the country is that this is where the quote-unquote Dust Bowl happened, except the Dust Bowl didn't happen here. The Dust Bowl did not happen in Oklahoma. It happened down in Texas. South of that long panhandle, there were a lot of Oklahoma natives in Texas at the time, and what caused the diaspora, if you will, west from Oklahoma, that was written about in The Grapes of Wrath and sung about by Woody Guthrie and others, Tom Joad, etc., was actually due to sharecroppers being thrown off their land and the land being plowed under. Now, they may have done it because of the conditions of the Dust Bowl, because that was caused by, I think that was the summer of 1935, and it was very warm at the time, and this area is really a desert. The roots of the plants don't go too deep, so it's not really good for farming much of anything except cotton. And there were great swaths of land which were sharecropper, and life was good for almost 100 years. And then the climate changed, basically, and they no longer had conditions that allowed them to continue doing the farming that they were doing, and so the sharecroppers were thrown off their land. That was the great movement west, written about in The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. But the Dust Bowl itself, dramatic on its own. was really a Texas phenomenon, not an Oklahoma phenomenon, which I think is very interesting. At least that's one thing that I looked at today as I did some fact checking coming across on Route 60, headed towards New Mexico. I am hell-bent for leather to get across, even though I pulled off the road because I was actually worried about my electrical cabinet. And I was worried that that was going to overheat. So I decided to stop and just open up the electrical cabinet and just let it air out. And that's what I'm doing. I got some comments on the page that it's pretty interesting. And somebody said, you should do videos about the wild and crazy things that have happened to you on the road and all the wild and crazy people that you meet. That was the gist of the thing. So speaking as a nomad, I'll just say that, you know, day-to-day life is not crazy. This is not a crazy thing. We don't meet crazy people. Yeah, we might run into people in a parking lot here. Yesterday I ran into some people at the Walmart parking lot where I was staying in Oklahoma, the eastern part of the state. But we don't, as a rule, run into too much crazy. Day-to-day life is just like day-to-day life anywhere, except it's just you're moving. And the great thing about doing it really is internal. It's the processes that we go through, and it's the challenges that we overcome in picking something that's relatively safe and a little bit more challenging than everyday life in a different way back in the world. So it's not really a wild and crazy experience. And I just said, you probably, you guys probably have crazier experiences where you are. And then the next question would have been, I suppose, how do you avoid getting into crazy and dangerous situations? And I think there's two key rules for that. First of all, don't stick your nose where it doesn't belong. I have watched people in various places at various times in this pursuit who get nosy and start sticking their noses into people's business, and they don't like it. And then some kind of confrontation ensues. Very seldom does someone come along and impinge upon your situation. And every time I've witnessed somebody, I was someplace, not recently, but not too long ago, and somebody was fixing a car in a rest stop, and this guy kept going over there and asking him if he needed help, and I could tell that I was like, you know what, why don't you just leave this guy alone? He told you once he didn't need help, and he doesn't want you bothering him. But it happens, and that's how you get yourself into trouble. The other way that you get yourself into trouble is by doing stupid things. Now, that can be a safety thing, it can be just a dumb thing, puncturing a tire or not looking before you drive somewhere. The main thing to remember when you're doing this is that if you're going to go off-road, if you're going to go into a campsite, if you're going to do anything, you got to stop and get out and look first, walk it and see what's up there before you drive down there, because you might get down there and find out you can't get out and you can't go further. So that's the kind of situation where you can get yourself into trouble, and one error usually leads to more errors, and more errors can cascade and become catastrophic. That has never happened to me. The guy that sold me the ambulance, which is just right here, I'll show you the ambulance right there. Long time ago, I remember when I first picked it up, I said, what am I going to do if this thing breaks down? And Ed Johnson, and he said, well, Bob, you just call a tow truck, and they come and they take it away, and you ride in the tow truck and they fix it. And I learned that is actually the case when I put 35 gallons of gasoline in the diesel engine. And fortunately, I was smart enough to turn it off, and it cost me a lot of money to have that thing towed, and to have the diesel fuel, to have the gasoline removed and treatment put in there, and then diesel fuel put back in. And it wasn't until we started it that whether we knew it was going to start or not, and whether it was going to need new injectors, which is very expensive. And actually, since then, it has run 10 times better than it ran before, Ed. I'm sure you'd be happy to hear that. So, yeah, we we get into trouble, but we get into trouble because of our own making, and we don't generally meet crazy people. I think we're the crazy ones in a lot of ways. The crazy ones in an on-the-road Jack Kerouac sense. The crazy ones that are wild and hungry and interested in experiencing a different kind of life than what people experience back home. So that's the answer to 2 questions that people asked in the comment section. As I said earlier in the short, I put up a new podcast recently about just people riding along with me so that I could illuminate. Now, it's an audio podcast, so it's at the BobDavisPodcast.com, podcast 1115. I'll put links in the description box, and these will be active, so you don't have to enter it in a URL window or something like you do on Instagram. But it gives you an audio tour of kind of what it's like to ride. It's kind of a ride-along. I've done 2 ride-along podcasts. This is the second one. The first one was podcast 941 or something, and 971, I don't know. And that was when I did a different kind of ride-along. This one is more focused on 2 or 3 stops that I made the other day while I was driving through Arkansas, which is another story. And without going too long, I don't use Google, I use maps. I use physical maps. And what got me into trouble in Arkansas, stand by, I'm going to talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to go get the offending item and show it to you. Oh boy, bringing the maps. So this is what I use to navigate with most of the time. This is an old Rand McNally Atlas. These are generally up to date. Sometimes they're not. Sometimes they change the name of roads and you don't know what's going on. I don't particularly like this because if you look closely, I don't know if I can get that in the shot. Yeah, okay, you can sort of see they're not real clear. It's hard to navigate with this level of detail sometimes. But I almost always use these maps. This is on Oklahoma. But the best map you can get is this map. This is the Benchmark. And they don't have it for every state. But Benchmark maps, just to show you the difference. This is just one example. This is, oddly enough, this is Pampa, Texas, where the Dust Bowl actually occurred. And as you can see, that one is extremely detailed. And they have on the back of it, depending on where you are, you've got these little boxes. And then you look up the corresponding box in the rest of the map, and you have these extremely detailed maps, and you can't go wrong with these. It's just that you're constantly turning the page. But it's great. What got me into trouble in Arkansas is this little number. This is a Arkansas state map that I picked up at a rest stop, and it's fine. I don't have my Arkansas. What happened to my Arkansas? Yeah, this is what happened to my Arkansas. And I don't know when, but this is what you're dealing with my actual Arkansas map. I use it a little bit, but... So I picked this up in the rest stop. And there's nothing wrong with this map. It's fine. You can navigate with it. But if you look real close, you see those red... You see it's hard to tell what's going on there. The scale isn't real good, and it's really hard to tell what's going on in that map. So... I got myself messed up in the forest, and that's actually in the podcast. So you can check that out if you listen to the audio podcast. But other than that, the end of a hot day, drinking a hot cup of coffee. I got myself all spread out at the truck stop. And let me show you I may as well pick the phone up so you can see. There's the truck with all my stuff in it, and I've got all the doors open so that I can get a nice breeze. And that is all. There's really nothing more to say, but I wanted to answer some questions, and also want to thank you guys for 1,500 subscribers. That's great. It's actually 1,550, so it's well on its way to 1,600. I don't make a big deal out of the 100 increments, but everybody that subscribes is definitely helping. And I also want to thank everybody on YouTube for being so enthusiastic and subscribing to the Bob Davis Podcast at iTunes and Spotify and Google Podcasts. It's helping the feeds, and it's helping the podcast grow. I did not want to do videos using my iPhone. I wanted to do full production videos and everything else, and I swore I wasn't going to do it, and I was put in the situation of having to put videos up, and so I've decided to do this very unproduced, using the iPhone wherever I am, static camera for a while, because I kind of like the sort of laid back and old school style of this kind of video, as opposed to trying to do some kind of production video, because that's a lot of video production. A guy asked me the other day, well, what would you do? And I was like, well, don't do an audio podcast, because there's too many, and it's really hard to do those, because you have to learn how to edit audio so you can't tell, and editing audio is hard. Editing television is even harder. And I want to tour, I want to drive, I want to go places. I don't want to spend all day in a hot truck editing video every other day. So I'm doing it this way. I don't have to edit, I don't care. I like the way it looks. And there you go. So that's what I'm doing. I have to make sure there's no flies in my coffee. But yeah, greetings from Oklahoma, where the wind goes sweeping across the plain. The sun is going down. I'm going to see if I can get some barbecue or something for dinner.